The part 3 of what is going to be a 4-part series on Messianism. Today we're going to talk about, I titled the class, Ironic Consequences of Maimonides' Rationalism. That is taken from a really fantastic article, and one of my favorite scholarly articles. It's not that long, and it's, I think, quite brilliant. An article published in a few different places by Dr. David Berger, appears in this book, Cultures in Collision and Conversation. It's an article that I cited a couple times in my sources here. Dr. Berger wrote an article called Some Ironic Consequences of Maimonides' Rationalistic Approach to the Messianic Era. So if you recall, last week we looked at the difference between the Rambam and Reb Sadigo and the Ramban in terms of understanding what Yemot HaMashiach are going to look like, what the days of the Messiah are going to look like. Kind of the Rambam, it seems like it's very fundamentally similar to life as we know it. It's just that there's going to be world peace, Jews will be living in Israel, we're going to have autonomy in land, people are going to recognize God, we're going to have more freedom to be able to focus on things that matter rather than on having to work night and day to put food on the table and to get by. Rather, the whole world is going to be focused on more, religious, spiritual, intellectual matters, and not worried about war and material things. That's the Rambam's understanding. It's something that is to be looked forward to. It's something that's very exciting, but not something that means that the world is going to change radically into a new world order. There will not be radical miracles. There will not be, people will still be, operating more or less as we do in our everyday. The metaphor that we looked at last time, the Rambam says that, a wolf and the lamb, is Garza Abe and Kevis, as a metaphor, whereas the other, like Mefarshim, philosophers, understand Garza Abe and Kevis, the wolf and the live with the lamb, as talking about a fundamentally different nature of the world. People are going to be, we talked about that last week. This week I want to talk about a consequence, perhaps unintended, of the Rambam's rationalism and his understanding of the days of the Mashiach. And let's take a look at the basic idea, that the kernel that Dr. Berger talks about in his article. And then I want to build upon that. So it's evident, at the beginning, he talks about the idea of Maimonides' rationalism. It's evident that Maimonides' purpose, which he formulates here almost explicitly, that's in the Mishnah Torah we looked at last week, is to moderate and dissipate messianic tension. In other words, if you recall, the Rambam says in the Mishnah Torah, he says that one is not supposed to preoccupy himself with trying to figure out when Mashiach's going to come, what the order, the sequence of events of war with Gog and Magog, or where Tchiyat HaMeitim fits in. He was like, basically, sit back and wait, let it happen, don't worry about it. This is meant, Dr. Berger points out, to dissipate fervor and excitement around focusing on that. Okay? So he says, one who understands that the statement of the rabbinic sages regarding these matters can be mistaken, as the Rambam said, that it can be mistaken, he will not direct most of his energy towards the study of the Midrashim that describe the redemptive process, and will thus not succumb to dangerous messianic temptation. But this practical purpose is not the only consideration that motivated Maimonides' assertion. There can be no doubt that his repudiation of signs and wonders, right, and his rejection of confident reliance upon rabbinic agadot derived from a fundamental rationalist perspective. He believed, however, that the philosophical approach and the practical objective go hand in hand. To provide further security, he went on to propose standards necessary for establishing not only messianic certainty, but even presumptive messianic status. Not everyone who wants to lay claim to the mantle can come and do so. In other words, what Berger is pointing out is that, according to the Rambam, we're supposed to calm down, take it easy. You don't necessarily know how things are going to play out. Messiah also, that is, he says, there's a very practical point there. People should stop making that the focus of the religion and should do Torah and mitzvot. And there's also a philosophical piece there, which is the Rambam doesn't like bringing in miracles when he doesn't have to bring in miracles. Something that can be understood rationally and naturally. The Rambam prefers to do this because of his religion, because of his philosophical stance. Okay, those two things go hand in hand, and therefore one would imagine that the Rambam's sort of tamping down of the the fervor and the focus on messianic activity or learning, that's his goal. That's one of his goals. So Berger points out that's, and I didn't include this part, but I'll include it more in a second, because that's all well and good until a messianic movement comes along. In other words, if you want to say, don't focus on it, there's no miracles involved in this thing, we don't know precisely how it's going to work out, all of that is good and would in fact perhaps have people focus elsewhere. If you don't know how it's actually, if there's no way of knowing what the truth is, then maybe we shouldn't focus on it. But what happens when people do start to focus on it? And what happens when a messianic movement starts to gather steam? And so I want to describe for you, this is what Dr. Berger sort of points to in parts of his essay, what happened with Shabtai Tzvi. So if you take a look in a period of about, again, I'm going to give a basic brief overview. I included a bunch of books here. Again, I've been reading about, preparing for this series of shiurim and learning about it more. I picked up a bunch of books. The book that I have not read it. I've read parts of it. This is Gershom Scholem's magnum opus is a book about Shabtai Tzvi. This is the book. Now it's interesting. Recently, it has a new introduction to it. Has been also very excellent for great biographical sketches as well. Is by some of you may know Yaakov Dweck. Yaakov Dweck. He grew up in Fieldstone, went to SAR Academy. He actually is the author of this very highly acclaimed book called Dissident Rabbi: The Life of Jacob Sasportas, he's a professor of Jewish thought and history, I believe, at Princeton. He's a graduate of SAR Academy. He grew up in Fields, Dweck.
I know Ezra was on our baseball team.
Yeah, Ezra was on baseball team. Ezra's older brother. His sister teaches here. Irit Dweck teaches in the high school. So Yaakov is a professor of Jewish thought and history, Jewish history for sure, at Princeton. He wrote this book, just came out earlier this year, I believe, called Dissident Rabbi. It's a biography, intellectual biography of one of the key players in the Shabtai Tzvi controversy. One of the main sort of combatant against Shabtai Tzvi as a false messiah in the late 17th century. So Dweck wrote the new foreword in this to Gershom Scholem's magnum opus, and Dweck's really the expert on this nowadays. There's also a great book. This is a great book put out from Brandeis University Press, Sabbatean Heresy, Writings of Mysticism, Messianism, and the Origins of Jewish Modernity. Lots of excellent stuff, and I used some of the information here for the talk today. Well, neither of these is. I want to give you a little bit of a sense as to what was going on in the Jewish world in 1666 when Shabtai Tzvi was in full force. I'm going to read one excerpt, and then I want to talk about it a little bit, and then I'm going to read a second excerpt. This first excerpt is, again, what's valuable here is this excerpt is not from a Jewish source. This excerpt is from a British diplomat who was serving in the Ottoman Empire, Paul Reichout, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He wrote a book, basically his diary, as to what it was like serving in the Ottoman Empire. And he was serving the Ottoman Empire during the time when Shabtai Tzvi claimed the mantle of being Messiah, and the Jewish world for a year and a half was completely obsessed And when I say completely obsessed, I'll read this a little bit to get to this an outsider's perspective. This is not somebody writing. This is not a Rav, right? This is a non-Jew who's a British diplomat serving the Ottoman Empire, describing what he sees in the Jewish community at this time. Look at this; it's very interesting. And now all the cities of Turkey where the Jews inhabited were full of the expectation of the Messiah. No trade or course of grain was followed. Of course of gain was followed. People stopped working. Everyone imagined that the daily provisions, riches, honors, and government were to descend upon him by some unknown and miraculous manner. Again, they're assuming a little bit, this is like, they're assuming the Ramban of Sadigo, miraculous manner. An example of which is most observable in the Jews of Thessalonica, who now, full of assurance that the restoration of their kingdom and the accomplishment of the times of the coming of the Messiah was at hand, applied themselves immediately to fasting. Everybody's fasting. And some in the manner that, beyond the abilities of nature, having for the space of 7 days taken no sustenance, were famished. People they're doing tshuva in the most extreme ways they could possibly do tshuva, because Mashiach is here, and a new world order is going to be put into place, and we want to make sure that we're part of it, so everybody's doing tshuva. Others buried themselves in this is wild. Others buried themselves in their gardens, covering their naked bodies with earth. Their heads, only accepted, remained in those beds of dirt until their bodies were stiffened with cold and moisture. Others would endure to have melted wax dropped upon their shoulders. Others to roll themselves in snow and throw their bodies in the coldest season of winter into the sea or frozen waters. But the most common matter of mortification was first to prick their backs and sides with thorns, and to give themselves 39 lashes, to give themselves malchut. All business was laid aside, none worked or opened shop unless to clear his warehouse of merchandise at any price. Going out of business sales for all of the Jews around the Ottoman Empire, and we'll see it's not only the Ottoman Empire, it's throughout the Jewish world. It made itself not only to the Sephardic lands, but also into the Ashkenazic lands. Whoever had superfluity in household stuff sold it for what he could. Everybody is selling everything. There is a fire sale for real estate, goods, everything. People are closing up shop and planning on moving to Israel because the Messiah has come. Okay, let's just take a step back for a second before we read any further. So just a little bit of intro. So Shabtai Tzvi, okay, I'll say a little bit of intro. If you want more intro, go ahead. Shabtai Tzvi was born in Turkey, Smyrna. He traveled around a bit. As a youth, he was considered to be quite, again, by most accounts, quite brilliant. He was a Kabbalist. He was, I think people nowadays will point out he seems to have exhibited patterns of behavior that indicate some sort of mental illness, perhaps, a bit of bipolar disorder, having like bouts of tremendous creativity and charisma, and also depression and melancholy. Essentially, Shabtai Tzvi is traveling around the world, goes from Turkey, ends up in Egypt, goes to Gaza, where there was a bit of a Jewish community in the 1600s. In 1665, he meets with Nathan of Gaza, Natana Azati, who is also a Kabbalist and a bit of a Talmud Chacham. And Nathan of Gaza informs Shabtai Tzvi, I'm going to basically be your right-hand man and your PR guy. And, you're the Messiah. Shabtai Tzvi, it's clear to was the Messiah, and Nathan of Gaza confirmed he's Messiah. And together they went around to go let the world know that indeed Shabtai Tzvi is the Messiah. Now, word spread like crazy, and you see throughout the Sephardic world, throughout the Ottoman Empire, and you also find throughout the Ashkenazic world as well. Whether you're in Amsterdam, whether you're in Poland, Jews believe that the Messiah has come. Now, there were some big skeptics. Yaakov Sasportas was the biggest skeptic who wrote a lot. It was firebrand arguing against, didn't believe that Shabtai Tzvi was really the Mashiach. But there was, for a year and a half, until around, I think it was like the late 1666, people really thought that he was Mashiach. And you see from this first-hand account here of Paul Reichout that Jews seem to have taken it seriously to the extent they're doing tshuva. And so, if you are a rabbi of a community, are you naturally in favor, or does this look like it might be a good thing that he's been declared himself as Mashiach? So, I think we'll see from more sources later on, the people are becoming more frum. People are all going to shul. They're learning more. They're doing tshuva. There's a mass movement now that's been sparked by the belief that Mashiach is here. So if you are, I understand why if you're the Rav of a community, you're a little more hesitant to push hard against it because, it seems to be having a nice effect on my community. It was hard to get a minion yesterday. Now it's easy to get a minion. I don't want to go against this guy. That might be part of it.
This I want to say. Maybe it's a good idea anytime to say Messiah coming. So
correct. You're right. Again, but to say Mashiach is coming is a good motivational tool. But there's a difference in Mashiach is coming and saying, I am Mashiach. So how does it all? Why did I say only for a year and a half? So how does it sort of end? I've got to say sort of, only sort of. In 1666, as Shabtai Tzvi was conjuring up a tremendous amount of enthusiasm amongst the masses of Jews across the world, across Europe, I should say. He's called to Turkey, to the Ottoman Empire, so it's not Turkey yet. And he is brought before the Sultan. He's imprisoned because he's creating some sort of rebellion. In prison, though, for several months, I don't remember precisely how long he was in prison. It was a sort of it wasn't a harsh treatment. He was allowed to hold court, and people came to visit him, and it was he was held in the prison, but he was not being punished in any kind of severe sort of way. He was just sort of held captive, but he did hold court. Eventually, though, he was given an ultimatum. Ultimatum was convert to Islam, or that's it. He converted to Islam, and he describes it as converted to Islam willingly, at which point he's released from jail, and he lives on for a number of years to various places. He ends up in Albania, is where he spends, I think he ends up passing away years later. But Shabtai Tzvi lived the rest of his life having converted to Islam. Now, most people, once Shabtai Tzvi converted to Islam, said, most Jews were like, he was a false Mashiach, and that's it, we made a mistake. A lot of people, though, refused to say that. They said, actually, this is part, and this is what Shabtai Tzvi and some of his followers suggested, this is all part of the grand plan. That Shabtai Tzvi was converting to Islam this is part of the Messianic process. He's going into Islam to eventually bring it up, to gather the sparks that are holy within Islam and to remove all the negativity within Islam. And this is going to be the ultimate leading towards the days of the Mashiach. That's what some of his followers would say. In fact, so this is something that Gershom Scholem points out, is that it used to be before, I think Scholem did a lot of his research, people thought that really Shabtai Tzvi movement ended when Shabtai Tzvi converted to Islam. Scholem points out there's a lot of many followers follow Shabtai Tzvi as after he converts to Islam, and he talks about there's a more moderate group of followers, a more radical group of followers. A more moderate group of followers believes that it was Shabtai Tzvi's job to convert to Islam, and but we're not supposed to. And there were more radical followers who believed that we also, Jews, were supposed to follow their leader Shabtai Tzvi. And many Jews converted to Islam not because what was driving them was precisely a rejection of Jewish faith, but because they believed that this is what their Messiah instructed them to do in order to bring about the complete end of days. And you find in Sabbatean thinkers, I think that's what Scholem really points out, there were those who became philosophers of this thought, which kind of incorporated Judaism and Islam. There's a lot of interest in Christianity as well. And as it sees, it's almost like a pan-religious movement that incorporates multiple aspects of different religions into it while being based on Judaism. Yeah.
He actively asked these Jewish followers to convert to Islam.
So that seems to be a bit of a. So there seems to be debate about that amongst the scholars, amongst followers. Yeah. So why am I mentioning all this right now? Because Berger points out in his article that there's something very interesting about the Rambam's effect on this. And what is the Rambam's effect on this? Well, here's what Berger's point is. It's great. As I said, the Rambam's rational, natural understanding of not knowing precisely how Mashiach is going to play out, that's very good at toning down the fervor and the enthusiasm for focusing too much on Mashiach. But when you have a messianic movement, it has the ironic consequence of not being able to tone that down. Because if I am a follower of Shabtai Tzvi, or I'm Shabtai Tzvi himself, and I say to you, I am the Messiah, how can you prove that I'm not the Messiah? If you're the Ramban and Rav Saadia, how do you prove that I'm not the Messiah? I'm not doing miracles. If you're the Rambam and you believe that there are no miracles, and he also emphasizes that we don't necessarily know the sequence of events, how things are going to precisely play out. So if you say that, how do you how do you slow down Shabtai Tzvi? You can't.
Because in this way or this way, you cannot.
I'm Shabtai Tzvi, and I say to you, I'm the Messiah. And then, if you say, Wayne, you're Shabtai Tzvi, I'm the Messiah. And I'm the Rambam, I'm going to say, again, Rambam's long dead, but I'm the Rambam, I'm going to say, well, I can't prove you're not Messiah. No?
Wait and see.
Wait and see. And I don't have a strong argument that can definitively prove you're not Mashiach. So Berger points out that's this ironic consequence of the Rambam's toning down the Messianism has the effect of firing it up. Isn't that interesting, like unintended consequence? So take a look. I want to show you how it plays out in a few different ways. This next episode, number 3, is taken from a book. It's in this 17 heresy I found from Thomas Conan. Thomas Conan was a Dutch minister in the 17th century who was serving in the Ottoman Empire. Okay? He wrote a book in which he talked about his experience serving as a minister in the Ottoman Empire, and when he's there in 1666, talking about his experience of Shabtai Tzvi sweeping the world. So I'm going to read for a little bit of what he says. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I want to make sure I get to everything. So he's talking. I'm reading the beginning there in that first column. I therefore changed the subject of that of his brother, the alleged Messiah, wanting to know on what basis he supported his folly. To this he did nothing other than praise the holiness of his brother, claiming that from his childhood, his brother had occupied himself with nothing other than reading and researching the law of the fathers. He learned Torah, etc., etc. And then Conan, again as a Christian, continues to challenge the Jews who believe the Shabtai Tzvi is the Messiah, because we've already had the Messiah, he says. And he's quoting, he says, the verses from the prophets that seem to indicate that would support his view of Jesus as the Messiah. And if you go to the bottom of that first column, none of these could apply to his brother, since their power and rule does not exist anymore. The second temple had been destroyed, the genealogies were confused, and his brother was born in Smyrna, he wasn't born in Israel, the Messiah is going to be born in Israel. It says, here's the thing I want to point out, the only answer, top of the column, I received was that God, when he would declare his brother the Messiah, would make that all known to me. In the absence of a better and deeper answer, I had to content myself with this one. He only asked me if it wasn't miraculous that after having been so many months in the hands of the great Turk, his brother was still alive and even fed on account of that Lord, and was also treated politely by the Turks themselves. So again, you see the Rambam's fingerprints here. How do you know it's not? God will eventually show it to us. What's the miracle that he's claiming? It's pretty well, the miracle is not like the world's changing. The miracle is that he's talking about is that even though he's claimed to be the Mashiach, the Turkish authorities aren't killing him and are treating him nicely. That's pretty natural, not very miraculous. You see the fingerprints of the Rambam in this contemporary source from published in 1669. Turn the page. Now let's get into some of the Jewish sources. Look at number 4. This is actually a letter from Nathan of Gaza, Natana Azati, in which he talks about, he sends this letter. Now, part of what some historians point out, that one of the things that allowed Shabtai Tzvi to flourish so much was printed word. That there were, letters being sent all over the world that were being read publicly in shuls, and the masses were getting very excited. So Natan Azati, Nathan of Gaza, would do just that. Here's a letter that he sent to Raphael Yosef of Egypt. And again, these letters are all collected. This is great, but there's a book called Tzitzat Novel Tzvi, which is a book written by Yaakov Sasportas, which he basically collects a lot of what the heretics, the Shabtai Tzvi were writing, and his own comments and critiques of it, trying to document what they were doing that was wrong and arguing against it. So this is a letter from Nathan of Gaza. It's quoted. This is the English version of it. I'll just read for you a little bit. You'll see the part that's interesting where he talks about the Rambam, actually. Well, you'll see where he sort of refers to the Rambam. I'll start with the second paragraph. I write to acknowledge receive your letter and to convey my delight that, Lord be praised, you are a believer in this faith. This faith meaning Shabtai Tzvi, which is clear as the sunlight, admits no dispute or any doubt whatsoever. This is the faith, though, which the Jewish people shall achieve their inheritance from the Lord, meaning the Jubilee that is revealed the time and come to their rest. There's going to be great peace for all the Jews, meaning the self-revelation, the holy ancient one within the irascible one that has occurred in the year 5430. Now we again face opposing forces, etc., etc. Go to the last line. I just want to highlight this. You must treat the following principle as absolutely certain. The Jewish people cannot attain life other than by leaving these things without any sign or miracle. Okay. The Shabtai Tzvi is not doing any miracles. That's part of the whole point. In other words, it's not about belief in miracle. You have to give over. There's a sense of almost like emunah here. That is going to be natural. You see, this is very much appealing. Again, if you're based, this is very much based on a Rambam-esque sort of understanding of Yemot Mashiach. Let's read a little bit more. This, however, that was Nathan of Gaza. That was a chief Shabtai Tzvi guy. Now I want to read for you from Rav Yaakov Sasportas himself, in his comment about how he understands what's taking place here and his rejection of it. Now I'll point out this is great. I have the Hebrew there and I have the English. The Hebrew again is there's a very well done scientific critical edition of Tzitzat Novel Tzvi that was put out by Gershom Shalom student Isaiah Yeshaya Tishby. This is taken from the Hebrew, and there's English translation there at the bottom. I want to read for you just a little bit. Of here we go. Pass that over to Elizabeth. I'll read a little bit from the Hebrew, and then I'm going to go to the English also. Look at this great thing. Ani Omer Kain, B'schar Haya Natan Li Al families a little further down. But B'Shem Tomrim, you might say to me, L'Ba'avor Hayoto Siba Shiachzaru Acharam Aminim B'nei Tekana Shavim. You might tell me, I'm reading the Hebrew on the right column, that this, in source number 5, you might tell me that people are doing tshuva. People are getting frumer. They're having more amunah. Zu eino ta'ana. This is not a good argument against the fact that he's a false Mashiach. Ki tshuva mechuyev alayna b'chol zman. You always have to do tshuva. You only do tshuva because somebody's claiming that they're a Messiah? B'chol zman. V'yoter tov kasher v'naseit l'karei v'efshar v'lasot v'adai v'lazur al yadav b'yat ha'geula. You can't know for certain that the Mashiach is coming. I'm going to skip to the next. I want to read the next thing because you'll see it fits in very nicely what we're talking about, the Rambam. Where did I go? Take a look. I'll read the Hebrew on the second column. V'im yomru hamamrim et pi razal. If the people who are rebelling against the words of our rabbis Shechachamenu lo nitkavnu el ha'emet. Like our rabbis did not necessarily declare the truth precisely about how Mashiach is going to happen. Ukemoshe Amar HaRambam, as the Rambam himself said, Hadvarim alalu lo yedah adam ech yiyu ad sheyu. As the Rambam said, people don't know precisely how things are going to happen until they actually happen. Gam ani omer kein, I admit. Aval lo kodem maaseh ashlich achar kabbalah razal shkol divrei tzedek v'emet. He points out, as he continues, that this is a weakness. I am a bit put in a difficult position because the Rambam does in fact say that you don't necessarily know. Now again, I don't think he's a liar, he's not from, he's telling us to do things that are Aveiros, and clearly he is, he seems like he's a fraud, but he admits, I can't know for certain that the guy is Mashiach. So all he's able to argue is, stop saying he's Mashiach, but I can't declare unequivocally he's not. And that's because it's ironic consequence of the Rambam. Now, if you turn the page, here's what gets even a little more interesting. And this is I didn't have this in English translation.
The phrase is saying, "Ve'im shamatim shani הלא אמרתי כל המאמינים that it's lie, שהכל שקר וחזר."
Yeah, but he can't prove it. He can't prove it. I'll read it in English. If those who rebel against the rabbi's words will say that our sages have not hit upon the truth, and as Maimonides said, all these matters cannot be known by man until they occur, then I too agree. But I will not discard the tradition of our sages, all of whose words are justice and truth, before the messianic fulfillment. Right? And if after the fulfillment it turns out those statements did not accord with the actual course of events, then the Messiah himself will argue on their behalf. And if you have acted out of piety but by leaving in Shabtai Tzvi, you have in fact placed yourself in the straits of serious doubt. Like, what? He's like, it's like very predictive. He's really, what's going to happen? This guy's not Mashiach. Then what are you going to do? Not be from anymore? Essentially, that's what he's saying. And it's kind of what happened. I remember I was like, this is maybe a long time ago, it's like when I was 30 years ago. I remember hearing, I was in yeshiva in Israel, I remember going to some seminar where somebody was talking about Mashiach. And the guy declared that Mashiach is coming within 2 years. It's a very definitive sort of thing. This is an 18-year-old, I'm very enamored of it. And it's enthralling because you see it's manipulative. It allows people to actually do good. You might be motivated to be better because Mashiach, I want to change, I want to be better. And for Mashiach, but when it doesn't happen, it's devastating. And that's what he's pointing out. I fear that's going to happen. You want to say maybe this is true, fine. I don't think it is, but you can't declare definitively that it is. Fine. Now turn the page. What I thought was so interesting. Now again, this is something that Berger alludes to, doesn't mention this in his article. Now I'm going to move kind of quickly. This is taken now. I want to fast forward a few hundred years to the 1960s. So this is a really interesting source here. So the Satmar Rav. So we know that Satmar Hasidim very much don't like the state of Israel. Okay, and the main source, the main intellectual source of the opposition of Satmar thought to Zionism is in the book Vayoel Moshe, which is a book written by the Satmar Rav of Yoel Teitelbaum. So, to be honest, I never really looked at it all that much. As a religious Zionist, I didn't really think it was in my. I had other things to focus on, but as preparing for this, I caught my attention something interesting that he points out. That's related to this that's worth exploring for a moment. It's very interesting. So the Satmar Rav talks about, I'm going to read this, I have it in the Hebrew, I'm not going to read all of it, I'll just read part of it. The Satmar Rav talks about Shabtai Tzvi. And this is what I thought, was interesting to bring it into this conversation. So So if you take a look at source number 6, it's in Hebrew there. I'll read part of it. It says, "V'kasher tchila hamavucha hanora'ah makat shatz." When the plague of Shatz, Shabtai Tzvi, took place, Yimach Shemo, may his name be blotted out. B'tchila, at the beginning, hit'a kim'at et kol ha'olam kulo. Initially, he fooled the whole world. Af gedolim atzumim, shayu b'yamim ahem. Many, all the gedolim, the Gedolei Ador, all the rabbis, everybody thought Shabtai Tzvi was the Messiah. He fooled everybody. V'hamaharish shasporta. This is like, but this Rav Yaakov Sasportas, Zal, Shaya Az Gadol Ador. He was the Gadol Ador. B'ga'onu to Kedusha. Genius, holiness, Yechidah. V'ra'iti michachmei Doro, many of the people of his generation, Shemitari Moto, B'Torah, Kadosh Eloki. He's referred to as, the Son Rav is now giving him his, credentials here. This Rav Yaakov Sasportas wrote the Tzitzat Novel Tzvi, is a serious, holy leader of the Jewish people. He's not a marginal character. He fought a valiant war against Shabtai Tzvi. And he gave up his life, essentially, his reputation, everything he was. And this is what Dweck points out in his book. He really put it all on the line to fight the good fight. Again, I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can read it a little further yourself. Now, who does the Satan Rav see himself as? Satan Rav sees himself as this guy, Rav Yaakov Sasportas. And what does he see Zionism as? Shabtai Tzvi. In other words, he's going to develop this idea. Again, this is not the basis of it. He has like some Halakhic stuff that he bases it on. But his thinking is, he basically says, he outlines it pretty clearly. Basically says, it took a long time till everybody realized that Shabtai Tzvi was false and it was all a false messianic movement. He basically says, I'll fight the good fight, and I'll take solace in knowing that there are good people who fought the good fight before me, and Zionism is false messianism, and I am going to fight against that also. And I understand that I might be, basically says explicitly, I might be humiliated, and people might argue against me, but so was he. And eventually he was found to be the right, And he also even points out, okay, I'll read a little bit further, because it's really interesting. I'm going to read, so you have that arrow there in the second column, a few lines from that, at the top of the second column. Ukfi asher anu ro'im b'chol hasparim hamidabrim mizeh savlu me'ota kat tkufa aruka shel harbe yoter mi-100 shanim ad shenikrat zaram. It took more than 100 years until basically there was nobody anymore believing in Shabtai Tzvi as having any authority or veracity. At that time, many of the people who knew the truth, they were afraid of the masses of people at that time who were going to, go against them. They said, you have to follow the majority. The majority believe in Shabtai Tzvi. He said, basically saying about himself, majority are saying Zionism is good. I see this though as I've got good precedent to base myself on. Those who fight for truth, even though they might be in the minority, see what they're doing. They're the ones who saved the generation. Yeah. So he sees himself as in almost like historic terms. Now, look at this also. This is great. I'm going to read. We'll do some touch more. He's contrasting the Shabtai Tzvi times with modern 20th century state of Israel times, Zionist times. The reason why most of the Jews followed him, this guy was a Talmid Chacham. He knew Shas, Uposkin, right? He knew Kabbalah. He knew everything. It was like second nature to him. He was a big Talmid Chacham and a Makubal. Od bebachuto b'yodo rak ben tetvav shanim, when he was a 15-year-old. He knew everything. Gam avodato b'ta'anitim, he used to fast, v'siguf mishiro v'tishbachot, he used to sing and daven. I'm not flee b'nichol rav, everybody thought he was incredible. Right? Gam hira otoda moftim noraim uvechzir alafim yisro b'tshuva. Thousands of people were doing tshuva. So he says, I'm not surprised that people back then thought that Shabtai Tzvi was the Messiah because he was a frum Talmid Chacham and he helped people do tshuva. These Zionists, though, they're not frum, they're secular, it's not a religious faith. What are all of my co-religionists, all these frum people doing, following these Fashtunken Zionists? That's what he says. I don't understand it. Ooh, take a look at the last column there at the bottom. Ulafela she'ota katshel geula shel sheker b'yameinu. Lo yitchilu klal b'koach haTorah v'avoda. Zionist Herzl, he's Shabtai Tzvi. Shabtai Tzvi at least was frum. People doing tshuva. Herzl, he had a nice beard, but he wasn't frum. Right?
Because they want Israel to be a Medinat Halakha.
He wants to be a Medinat Halakha, and you can't do it until Mashiach comes. Okay? So I just thought that this was, again, how does this, I just want to point out, I don't buy into the Satmar theology here for multiple reasons, but there's something that is to be respected if you take a step back and we ask ourselves now, and this is going to be, I'm now transitioning to a little bit of an intro, it's going to be our last series next week, we're talking about Zionism as Messianism, but talking about that in this context, like, how wrong is this an inaccurate or inappropriate historical kind of precedent? It's interesting. I never really thought about it. In other words, the kinds of things that, again, let's be honest, like one of the things that makes us talk about as religious Zionists, talk about the Messianism of this era, is that there's more, we'd say, there's more Torah, not even now, there is more Torah learning in Israel now than there ever was in the history of the Jewish people. There are more people who are religious. Like, even though it started off as secular, the religious nature of the Jewish community in Israel is extraordinary. So how, like, are we it's like, what does that mean for us? And I was like, is the Messianism that we as religious, like, how does Messianism fit into our religious Zionism? And so he's arguing that you're all being fooled, just like everybody's fooled in Shabtai Tzvi, and I'm right, and I'll wait it out, and history is going to smile fondly upon me, just the way history smiled upon Yaakov Sasportas. It's a very, like, I don't think he's right, but it's like, there's something to the argument. No? Yeah?
Can't help while you're talking about the Satmar Rav to also think about Chabad.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you could contrast, because there is a contrast there.
Sure. I mean, thinking that
Not
the
only about their own issue about Mashiach,
right,
but also their attitude towards Israel is not the same.
it's not the same. But the attitude of Chabadnikim towards Israel is much more positive than the attitude of Satmar. In other words, like, Satmar's theology really is that, in its most extreme form, is that there's no value whatsoever to having any sense of autonomy in Israel.
Right.
It's, again, whereas my understanding is that Chabad is much more, again, not in favor of a secular government.
Are Mashiach believers.
Yeah, well, so I'll say, we're all Mashiach believers.
Yeah.
The Mashiach believers, though, again, I thought about making one part of the series talking about Chabad's understanding of the Rabbi as Mashiach, how that plays into things. I think that's very interesting. Speaking of David Berger, that's one of his major areas of focus. Also, is looking at Chabad's Messianism. I think. Listen, another part of this is, like, you see how Messianic movements are hard. They die very hard because once you put all of your stock in something, you really don't want to believe. When it's wrong, it's really hard to admit that it's wrong. Like a lot of Shabtai Tzvi believers, these guys that we saw in the beginning are selling their businesses, moving to Israel. It's very, you understand a little bit more like why some of them continued to believe. It's really hard to not believe that you made such a terrible mistake. Now it's interesting to look at, to look with a skeptical or a cautious eye about Israel as a messianic movement. In other words, like, how do we think about it? And we're going to look at this more next week. But is living in Israel now, are we in Yemot Mashiach? And so I want to close out for the last 10 minutes with just a couple interesting things. If you take a look at the Tefillah L'Shlom Medinat Yisrael, so it is pretty messianic. When it talks about the prayer for the state of Israel, right? There are a lot of messianic themes in it. Again, I just want to explain. Like, one could say it's a mitzvah to live in Israel. It's good to have autonomy. It saves the Jew. Whereas it's a refuge for Jews. We love the land, and it's a mitzvah to live in Israel. But do we see this as messianic or not? Are we in Yemot HaMashiach? That we're going to talk next week about, like, different theories about that. Let's get started just a little bit right now as we move into it. There's a lot of messianic themes in the Tefillah Shel Medinat Yisrael. Anybody want to point out what are? Right, we say Ushlach. Right, we ask towards the second last paragraph. Ushlach lemehira ben David Mashiach tzidkecha. We should send the Mashiach himself. In other words, like, we're implicitly meaning we're living in messianic times now. But how does it refer to the state of Israel in the beginning? So it's a very funny phrase. What's Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu mean? We say the state of Israel, Barechem Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu. What's that mean? The beginning of the beginning of the redemption. That's still more than saying nothing. In other words, you could say it's good. You could say Medinat Yisrael Geulatenu. You could say Medinat Yisrael Reshit Geulatenu. But the author of this tefillah chose to say that it's Medinat Yisrael Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu, the beginning of the flowering of the redemption. That's double hedging yourself against declaring definitively that it is Yemot HaMashiach. Okay?
You can ask who wrote this.
Koren publishes a lot of books. And so this is the Koren Machzor for Yom HaAtzmaut and Yom Yerushalayim. It's very thick. How can you have such a thick book it's a lot of essays. So the half of it, or a third of it, is essays on the topic of Israel. There's a great essay here, which I incorporated a little bit into these thoughts by Rabbi J.J. Schachter. Rabbi J.J. Schachter has a great article in here called "The Beginning of the Flowering of Our Redemption," where he sort of traces the authorship and the history of this tefillah. So it's interesting, though. Take a look at the bottom. All right. Oh, so there's another one of my books here. But so I happen to have been flipping through this yesterday, and it came out as a great little piece. This is the RCA just came out with a new siddur, which is based on a lot of it has a lot of Soloveitchik's notes and comments and theories in it. It's a really nice siddur. RCA just published it. It's like a little bit of a competition to the Art Scroll. I guess you have Koren's competition to Art Scroll, and this RCA siddur is competition to Art Scroll. But the RCA's siddur has a very interesting thing. This is what I printed here. Take a look at the bottom of the page. It's a really interesting point. When it talks about Tefillah Shel Medinat, it says that this is one of the footnotes, the bottom of the siddur. But the founder of the state of Israel,
Who's writing this?
This is Rabbi Basil Herring, is the editor-in-chief of this siddur.
That's his.
This again, I'm not sure whether it's Rabbi Herring who is offering as associate editors, or Rabbi Matenki from Chicago, Rabbi Billet from Woodmere. A number of assistant editors also. I'm not sure who's next, but this is the RCA version. Look at this interesting point. The point that mentioned at the bottom. I didn't know this. With the founding of the state of Israel in 1948, it was recognized that a new prayer was necessary to address the phenomenon of an autonomous Jewish sovereign state. The Ashkenazi chief rabbi at the time, Rabbi Isaac Alevi Herzog, composed this text with input from the renowned and observant author Shmuel Yosef Agnon. So Agnon helped Rav Herzog author this. The phrase, this is the interesting part for our purposes here. The phrase describing the state of Israel as Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu, the beginning of the flowering of our redemption, is ambiguous. Some understand it as affirming that the state of Israel is a harbinger or precursor of the long-awaited Messianic redemption. To avoid making such a definitive declaration of Messianic certainty, some ardent Zionists, including Rabbi Soloveitchik, chose to omit the phrase entirely. Isn't that interesting? I didn't know that. Rabbi Soloveitchik would not say, again, he's a big Zionist, and he got, he was a chairman of the Mizrahi, he was, broke from his family's tradition of being anti-Zionist, he was a very strong Zionist. He was careful about claiming that he wouldn't call it Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu. He would just say, Avinu Shebashmayim Tzur Yisrael V'Goleh Barecha B'Medinat Yisrael Hagein Aleh Be'avach Lastach. He didn't want to make a declaration with definitive certainty, even saying Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu. He didn't want to say that. Others amend it by prefacing the phrase with the word Shetehei. In other words, you'd read Shetehei Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu. I'm not saying it, defining it, or declaring definitively that it is the period of even a beginning of the flowering of the redemption. I pray that it should be the beginning of the flowering of the redemption. Most, however, said the prayer is found here in the form originally composed by the chief rabbin. In any case, it's clear that the author did not intend to apply the state of Israel would replace the need for the Messiah, as seen from the fact, the final stanza, as God descend us soon, your righteous Messiah, etc., etc. But I thought that was really interesting. Again, it fits in this. There's something about the. Again, now let's go full circle. Now go back to the Rambam. I want to point out that the Rambam, as Dr. Berger pointed out, and we'll close with this. Dr. Berger had pointed out that when you have a messianic movement, it becomes very hard to slow it down if you hold by the Rambam's theory. There's no miracles that you can say you aren't happening. Like, it might be messianic. Is the state of Israel the messianic era? It might be. And it would seem to be. Now, here's the part that's interesting also. Why do many religious Zionists consider the Rambam to be their ideological, kind of foundation? Because if you believe it's natural, I assume that allows for human activity. I'm not just waiting for the Beit HaMikdash to plop down from Shemayim. Like Rashi said, like the Rambam would tell you, you got to do stuff. I would assume. So the Rambam perhaps gives some sort of basis or foundation for a bit of activism in bringing about Mashiach. But at the same time, interestingly, like Rav Soloveitchik would be like, again, I can't declare definitively that it is, lest I fall into the trap of Shabtai Tzvi. I don't know. Or it's a little bit all sensitive a bit to the Satmar Rav's claim that this is really not Messianism. Take a look. I want to close with Berger's last a point from the end of Dr. Berger's essay. Again, it's a beautiful. I encourage you to read it. It's not that long. It's a wonderful read. As I've noted, there are scholars who do not see the irony in this situation because they attribute to Maimonides a conscious, though moderate, activist intention. As we just said, the Rambam would have an activist. People would think. Berger doesn't think this is the case. He thinks that the Rambam could be understood as you're supposed to be active in bringing about Yimot Mashiach. I see no evidence, this is Berger's claim, for this motivation in his writings, and I'm not willing to create such a Maimonidean position based on logical considerations alone, when his explicit directive is simply to wait. He says, the Rambam says, I don't know. I'm not sure how it's going to happen. Now again, is it against the Rambam to be active? No. Would the Rambam say you must be? He says, I don't want to go so far. On the other hand, scholars who have dealt with Maimonides' influence on Messianic developments before the rise of Zionism tend to view his stand as a successful attempt to thwart Messianic activism. As we have seen, this position too is highly questionable. It seems to me that we stand before an ironic paradox with significant consequences. The rationalist, that's the Rambam here, while striving to moderate the Messianic drive, will sometimes unwillingly enhance it. Great summary. He's the best. Really thoughtful and insightful comment. And if you take a look at the footnote he has at the bottom, Dr. Berger, who is a religious Zionist, points out, he has, for reasons that may be scholarly, may be personal, I do not assert that Maimonides' own posture would have necessarily compelled him to oppose the Messianic motif in religious Zionism, especially after the development of the larger movement out of other considerations. My remark at the beginning of this essay about movements that are thoroughly inimical to the rationalist mode of thought refers to Sabbateanism, to Shabtai Tzvi, and other classic Messianic movements. Still, the encouragement of Messianic activism, even of the moderate type, played no role in Maimonides' consciousness, but emerged willy-nilly out of his rationalist position. But he says, to use Maimonides' proof that there's no Messianic significance in the establishment state of Israel runs afoul of the problem he pointed out in the first half of the essay. Proponents of this position customarily point out that Maimonides mentions the ingathering of the exiles only after the appearance of Messiah and rebuilding the temple. Maimonides himself pointed out his agnostic ruling. In other words, he's not certain how it's going to play out, but it certainly seems like this has elements of Messianism in it. So with that, pointed out the Rambam's ironic position, the ironic consequences of the Rambam's position here, set the stage a little bit for how Zionists understand Messianism, and we'll close out next week with different views of Zionism as they play into Messianism.
The Zionist movement.
Thank you.
The Zionist movement.